my gosh! The iconic one and only TV show Game of Thrones is still running, so I'm finally not outdated. Yay. So, the TV show Game of Thrones is still running when I was starting to watch TV. So, after a bunch of troubleshoot and frustration, I can finally watch the 18 plus TV show Game of Thrones. By the way, just a small disclaimer, or whatever you call it. I am not 18 years old yet, but I'm watching Game of Thrones, which is 18 plus, which is R-rated. So, there's that. And I'm not watching it because it's violent, it's sexy, it's because of the story, it's because of the characters. So, if you're under 13 or something, I really don't suggest you watch the show. What I mean is, if you're older than 13 years old and you understand that, you watch Game of Thrones is not for the violent stuff and the sexy stuff, then you're good. Alright, so let's get into it. The first episode is called Winter is Coming. A very normal opening shot. 3 random dude walked into the woods beyond the wall, and 2 of them got killed by a wildling and saw some White Walkers, and then one of them made back to Winterfell and got his head chopped off. By the way, it's not a spoiler, because it's in the pilot episode, so it's not really a spoiler. But yeah, FYI, they died. So, we went from 3 random dudes to Winterfell, and how it's connected to King's Landing, which is another place, a capital, in fact. At the beginning, everyone was together. Alfie Allen, who plays Theon Greyjoy, Kit Harington, who plays Jon Snow, Maisie Williams plays Arya Stark, Sophie Turner plays Sansa Stark, Sean Bean plays Ned Stark, and they were all together in one place, in the same scene, and family is good. And in King's Landing, we also got Joffrey Baratheon, the Hound, and Jaime and Cersei Lannister. And also the King, Robert Baratheon. So now we have a clear map of character relationships right now. Which is simple at first, but it'll get very complicated very soon. And so far so good, it's very entertaining. 1.5 months later, I continue to watch the pilot episode, while I'm bearing the fact that I'm still 13.5 years old. But, I mean, honestly, I know swear words. But honestly, there's not much happening in this episode, except Jaime did stuffs to Bran Stark, which I've seen like 1,000 times before watching this episode in YouTube. But don't get me wrong, it's just the pilot episode. What do you expect in the pilot episode, other than building characters and introducing sets? And yes, it's a promising pilot episode. Not really exciting, but promising pilot episode. There's a lot to explore. And yes, HBO is so ballsy. There is already 7 naked woman scenes, and 4 F-bombs, and 3 sex scenes, and violence, and gore. 18 plus. They're not kidding. Continuing the binge watching of Game of Thrones, we move on to episode 2, The King's Road. Jon Snow is leaving Catelyn Stark and the other Starks because he's joining the Night's Watch. And Catelyn Stark was upset about Jon Snow. There's that. But the way, also, I really like the term bastard, because we don't really use it in real life, so the word bastard means children that is not born traditionally by the same mother, but the same father. I'm gonna give a spoiler alert. I know, it's so early, it's so soon, but I'm still giving a spoiler alert. So a random assassin suddenly appeared of nowhere and tried to kill Bran and Catelyn. And then Catelyn tried to fight back, but of course, it's Catelyn. It's an old woman. And then the direwolf came out. Also, Sansa Stark liked Joffrey. What the hell, man? And as they were walking along, they saw Arya Stark playing with Micah, which is the butcher's boy. Joffrey, which is an asshole, threatens Micah and was cutting his face. And Arya disarmed Joffrey, and then the direwolf came out again and, bit Joffrey. So, who is to blame? The direwolves or Joffrey? I'm gonna blame Joffrey because he started the whole thing. But again, direwolves are no pet. If they see their owner being attacked, they will join the fight and very likely winning. Anyways, this episode fascinates me a lot. Then it's episode 3, Lord Snow. Pretend that nothing have happened last episode. The Starks are moving to King's Landing, and a new character showed up, Peter Baelish. And also, I started to like the character of Tyrion Lannister. He's sarcastic, funny, he's cool. Now we come to episode 4, Cripples, Bastards, and Broken Things. I'm actually quite amazed how British Peter Dinklage's accent on the show is, because apparently he's American. And it's a great thing that Maisie Williams can act. She's just a kid back then, and usually kids aren't really cooperative on set, but Maisie Williams, she did a pretty nice job acting. So there's that. This episode is also quite fascinating. Finally, Jon Snow does something and protects the new character, which is Samwell Tarly, which is a pretty nice story. And the ending, I love it. And I appreciate how the show slowly builds tension and suspense, and suddenly at the end, there's a point of outburst. And it's just really surprising. But still, how can Catelyn Stark, or Catelyn Tully, be so sure that Tyrion Lannister is the attacker, if you know what I mean? Let the drama begins, because this is episode 5, The Wolf and the Lion, which is the war between the Lannisters and the Starks. While the subplot line is Robert Baratheon wants Daenerys Targaryen dead because, Baratheon hated the Targaryens, so that her baby won't lead the Dothrakis to invade King's Landing. First, I love the character of Ned Stark. He's honest, he's just, and he's brave. And the most important of all, he is honorable. And I personally think that Ned Stark should rule Westeros instead of Robert Baratheon. Second, I'm gonna admit it that I actually like Mark Addy's performance as Robert Baratheon. It's actually pretty decent. Third, I wanna say that it's a really cool fact that the show is beginning to be more and more interesting every episode. I don't know why, but I'm just really interested in the show after I watched episode 5. Then the story went on to episode 6, A Golden Crown. This episode is even more entertaining than all the previous episodes. First of all, I love Tyrion Lannister, the character, again. Especially the scene where he's trying to bribe Mord to set him free. And it's even more entertaining when Tyrion was on trial. He told all these jokes, and then at the end, he demanded a trial by combat. And it is a good scene. At the darker side of things in King's Landing, Ned Stark was fine. He's alright, but he realized something shocking. Yet, I won't spoil it, but it really foreshadows the conflicts between the Lannisters and the Starks. But there's one problem about this episode, and it is Jon Snow. It's missing. And then, oh my goodness, the shit is going down. The show is getting more darker and darker, yet more exciting and intense. That is drama, my friend. This is episode 7. You win or you die. Oh my gosh. First, look at this beautiful plot structure. Now, there's a total of 4 storylines. Okay, 4 storylines. First, it's Jon Snow in King's Landing, Daenerys storyline in Vaes Dothrak, Tyrion Lannister, having some trouble, and Ned Stark in King's Landing. I wonder, how did Game of Thrones achieve this thing where it makes a person feel bad and hopeless for King's Landing, yet still pretty excited? So, yes, King's Landing is corrupted, it's full of bad people, it's full of liars, but still, it's not completely hopeless. We still have a little bit of hope. And anyways, Ned Stark, the Honorable Ned Stark, continued trusting Littlefinger, while Joffrey is actually even worse than we thought he is. So I really appreciate the plot structure of the show. It's like the golden ratio for television. And that's what makes the story very compelling. The story keeps making us root for characters, especially the Starks, in each plot line, and makes us feel how it feels to be a Stark. Which, in this episode, the story is quite dark and chilling, especially the heart-wrenching ending of the episode. Moving on to episode 8, The Pointy End. So there's about to be a war between the Starks and the Lannisters. And yes, that's all I can say without giving a spoiler alert. First of all, I actually like the character of Varys because he actually treated Ned Stark pretty well. And I also root for the character of Ned Stark so much. Again, I know I repeated this a lot of times, but Ned Stark is a great person. And now he's in custody. He's in a jail cell. Of course, I am very worried about his life. And when Robb Stark knows about Ned Stark's trouble, of course, he will go to war. And Catelyn also said, even if he loses this war, everyone dies. So now I'm actually really worried about the Starks. And I really root for the Starks. The Starks forever. And Tyrion Lannister as well. Moving on to episode 9, Baelor, which I think is simply the best episode of season 1. First of all, the Forbidden Magic storyline with Daenerys Targaryen and Jorah Mormont was really intense. And I really like Daenerys' storyline, really. Then now the story also introduced Walder Frey, which is a villain later in the series. But for now, spoiler alert again. Sorry guys, but it's Game of Thrones. So last time, Ned Stark was held captive, and Varys the nice eunuch tells him to confess his crimes, so that he will stay alive. So I root for Ned Stark so much, and I hope he really confessed his crimes. And in the last scene, it was just a normal day, when Arya Stark roams in the street alone. Then they saw everyone going to the Sept of Baelor. So she followed and saw Joffrey, Cersei, Sansa, and Ned Stark in the Sept. Then Ned Stark really confessed his crimes. Oh my gosh. He is an honest person, but not this time. Because he lied for Arya and Sansa. Even if he confessed, it doesn't matter. Because Joffrey was so determined to chop his head off. Bring me his head. And in the last moment, we all realize that main characters die. And it doesn't matter if Ned Stark lied or not, because he's gonna die anyways. So it's such a sad ending that I almost tear up. So it's the last episode. And I'm also giving a spoiler alert warning. So we're in the season finale, Fire and Blood. After the tragedy last episode where Ned Stark got killed by the asshole of Joffrey Baratheon, we are anticipating an ultimate showdown between Robb and Joffrey. And please bring a happy ending. Please. But no. There's not even an ending. The war between the Starks and the Lannisters didn't really start. Robb became the King of the North, but the war is left for later seasons. I don't call it anticlimactic, but it's more like a cliffhanger, because I really look forward to see the Starks destroying the Lannisters. But oh boy, the season ended in a grandiose but yet ambiguous way. Grandiose, because the last shot of the entire season is Daenerys Targaryen, naked, with 3 dragons. And bear in mind, it's a spectacular scene, simply because there were no dragons in the whole season, except for the last shot. And yes, Daenerys has become more powerful. This episode is all about cleaning up the mess, really, but I really do enjoy the first few scenes, which is incredibly emotional. So at last, Game of Thrones Season 1 really hits me in the heart. I loved it really much. Although it is adapted by a book, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss proved that they can do better than the book does. It's not really that artistic or creative because they really followed the book really tightly, but the season is no doubt one of the most revolutionary seasons of television history. It makes our jaws drop. It also brings a nice medieval feel to it. It's like Lord of the Rings, but it's even more medieval and even more old-fashioned. And the show really makes teenagers fall in love with politics and history. Because after watching Game of Thrones, my history improved at school. And I really like how detailed the show can be. The costumes, the makeup, all the small props in the set, and the filming locations. They are really beautiful. I mean, I'm not even kidding. The scenes for King's Landing, which is filmed in Croatia, epic. And then the scenes for Vase Dothrak, amazing. So overall, I really love this season. The worst episode is episode 3, Lord Snow, and the best is episode 9, Baelor. Really sad. I'm saying Game of Thrones Season 1 is mind-blowing, and I'm definitely gonna give it a 10 out of 10. So, have you watched Game of Thrones Season 1? From 1 to 10, how much would you rate it? Like if you like, and subscribe if you want more.